Deep down, I want to be nurtured and protected. I'm furious. Welcome to NVC Life. I'm Rachelle Lamb, veteran NVC trainer and relationship coach, helping listeners navigate interpersonal conflict and ground more deeply into relational living. Greetings, fellow humans. In today's episode, I am going to read you an excerpt from the book titled The Course of Love, a novel by Alain de Botton. You've heard me speak about him in previous episodes, and this particular section of the book is describing something that anyone who lives with another person is most likely familiar with. And it has to do with chores, how we speak about chores, our expectations around them, and how so often people become argumentative and claim the victim position. The argument is about who is suffering most. And if you're not familiar with the book already, it's describing the relationship between two people who meet, who fall in love, who get married, who imagine that love will save them from all of the other challenges that other relationships face. They have children, and it's such a realistic depiction of relationship. And the story goes as most relationship stories go. It's not a happily ever after, but nor is it a dreadful outcome. But there are so many challenges that are important for us to recognize that come up in relationship. So here we go. It's about a couple. They have two children who at the time that I'm reading about are aged 11 and 9. So I just want you to imagine this particular scene, and it's called The Prestige of Laundry. Rabbi and Kirsten are a modern couple and therefore share tasks according to a complex arrangement. Rabbi goes to work 5 days a week but comes home early on Friday afternoons to look after the children, which he is also responsible for doing on Saturday mornings and Sunday afternoons. Kirsten works Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays till 2 o'clock, and on weekends is with the kids on Saturday afternoons and Sunday mornings. He does Friday bath time and prepares supper 4 nights a week. She buys the food and the household supplies while he takes care of the trash, the car, and the garden. It's just after 7 on a Thursday evening. Since this morning, Rabbi has attended 4 meetings, dealt with a failing tie supplier, cleared up a misconception about tax rebates, and sought to bring the new CFO on board with a scheme for a client conference which could have great implications for the third quarter. He has had to stand in the aisle of a crowded commuter bus for half an hour each way and is now walking back from his stop in the rain. He's thinking about how great it will be to finally get home, pour himself a glass of wine, read the children a chapter of the famous 5, kiss them goodnight, and sit down for a meal and some civilized conversation with his most sympathetic ally and friend, his spouse. He is at the end of his tether and inclined to feel sorry for himself. Kirsten has meanwhile been home almost all day. After driving the children to school, and there was an ugly fight in the car over a pencil case, she put away breakfast, made the beds, took 3 related work calls. Her colleagues seem to have a hard time remembering she's not in the office on Thursdays or Fridays, cleaned 2 bathrooms, vacuumed the house, and sorted out everyone's summer clothes. She arranged for a plumber to come and look at the taps, picked up the dry cleaning and delivered a chair to be reupholstered, booked a dental appointment for William, collected the children from school, prepared and fed them a snack, cajoled them into doing their homework, got supper ready, ran a bath, and cleaned a set of ink stains off the living room floor. Now she is thinking how great it will be to finally have Rabbi come home and take over so she can pour herself a glass of wine, read the children a chapter of the famous 5, kiss them good night, and sit down for a meal and some civilized conversation with her most sympathetic ally and friend, her spouse. She is at the end of her tether and inclined to feel sorry for herself. When they at last find themselves alone in bed reading, Kirsten doesn't want to cause trouble, but there are a few things on her mind. "Will you remember to iron the duvet covers tomorrow?" she asks without raising her eyes from her book. His stomach twists. He strives for patience. "It's Friday," he points out. "I thought perhaps you could do that kind of thing on a Friday." Now she looks up. Her gaze is cold. Gotcha, she says. "Domestic stuff, my job. Never mind. Sorry I asked." Back to her book. These grating, scratching encounters can be more exhausting than flat-out rage. He thinks, "I earn 2/3 of our income, possibly even more depending on how the total is calculated. But it seems I also do more than my fair share of everything else. I'm made to feel as though my work were solely something I was doing for me. In fact, it's rarely satisfying and invariably stressful. I can't be expected, on top of it all, to take on the duvets. I do my bit. I took the children swimming last weekend, and just now I loaded the dishwasher. Deep down, I want to be nurtured and protected. I'm furious." And she thinks, "Everyone seems to believe my 2 days at home are all about relaxing and that I'm lucky to have this time. But this family wouldn't hold together for 5 minutes without all the things I get done in the background. Everything is my responsibility. I long to take a break, but whenever I bring up some chore I want to pass on, I'm made to feel I'm being unfair. So in the end, it seems easier to be quiet. There's something wrong with the lights again, and I will have to chase the electrician tomorrow. Deep down, I want to be nurtured and protected. I'm furious." Now, de Botton describes a little bit about what's going on. "The modern expectation is that there will be equality in all things in the couple, which means at heart an equality of suffering. But calibrating grief to ensure an equal dosage is no easy task. Misery is experienced subjectively, and there is always a temptation for each party to form a sincere yet competitive conviction that in truth his or her life really is more cursed in ways that the partner seems uninclined to acknowledge or atone for. It takes a superhuman wisdom to avoid the consoling conclusion that one has the harder life." Back to the story. Kirsten goes to work for enough hours of the week and earns enough money that she isn't inclined to be overly grateful to Rabbi just for his slightly greater salary. At the same time, Rabbi has taken on enough tasks around the house and has been left to fend for himself on a sufficient number of evenings that he isn't inclined to be overly grateful to Kirsten just for her greater efforts around the children. Both are engaged with a sufficient share of the other's primary task not to be in any mood for unalloyed gratitude. The difficulties of modern parents can in part be blamed on the way prestige is distributed. Couples are not only besieged by practical demands at every hour, they are also inclined to think of these demands as humiliating, banal, and meaningless, and are therefore likely to be averse to offering pity or praise to one another or themselves just for enduring them. The word prestige sounds wholly inappropriate when applied to the school run and the laundry because we have been perniciously trained to think of this quality as naturally belonging elsewhere, in high politics or scientific research, the movies or fashion. But stripped to its essence, prestige merely refers to whatever is most noble and important in life. We seem unwilling to allow for the possibility that the glory of our species may lie not only in the launching of satellites, the founding of companies, and the manufacturing of miraculously thin semiconductors, but also in an ability, even if it is widely distributed among billions, to spoon yogurt into small mouths, find missing socks, clean toilets, deal with tantrums, and wipe congealed things off tables. Here, too, there are trials worthy not of condemnation or sarcastic ridicule, but also of a degree of glamour, so that they may be endured with greater sympathy and fortitude. Rabbi and Kirsten are suffering partly because they have so seldom seen their struggles sympathetically reflected in the art they know, which instead tends to belittle and to poke puerile fun at the sorts of troubles they face. They cannot admire their own valor in trying to teach a foreign language to a child who is squirming in impatient fury, in constantly buttoning coats and keeping track of hats, in decently maintaining a household of 5 rooms, in controlling and mastering moods of despair, and in helping to put their modest but complicated domestic enterprise along with every new day. They will never be outwardly distinguished or earn large sums of money. They will die in obscurity and without the laurels of their community, and yet the good order and continuity of civilization nevertheless depends to some tiny but vital degree on their quiet, unnoticed labors. Were Rabbi and Kirsten able to read about themselves as characters in a novel, they might, if the author had even a little talent, experience a brief but helpful burst of pity at their not at all unworthy plight, and thereby perhaps learn to dissolve some of the tension that arises on those evenings when, once the children are in bed, the apparently demoralizing and yet, in truth, deeply grand and significant topic of the ironing comes up. I think this is a brilliant piece of writing. As I said at the beginning of this episode, it so beautifully illustrates the mundane life that people have and struggle with every day. And the idea that perhaps that many of us have is that it's not supposed to be that way. I think that's problematic. If you're familiar with de Botton's work, he talks about the impact of romanticism and the films done by Disney of the happily ever after, that once the people get married, that's when their love story really begins. But it begins truly in another way, with hard work. And I appreciate when he writes about spooning yogurt into small mouths, finding missing socks, cleaning toilets, dealing with tantrums. These are the things that come up in a person's day-to-day life, and they don't have the prestige, at least we don't accord it to them. I remember so often speaking about my own mother as just a housewife. Are you kidding me? Just a housewife? Just a mother? This is very prestigious and noble work. So partly what is happening, or largely what is happening, is people's view of what their life is supposed to look like. And one of the ways that people do, especially if they have financial resources, they're able to outsource that mundane work. They get house cleaners, they get nannies, they get other people to do the work they don't want to do. It happens also in our societies in terms of who does what kind of work. Is the work of picking up the garbage every week, waste management? Who works at the grocery stores, stocking the shelves? So I think if you just look at your own thinking about these things, and anyone who's got children will be encouraging them to get into lines of work where they're not doing the menial stuff. And yet it's the menial stuff that makes the world turn. It's the menial stuff that we cannot get by without every day. So I just wanted to share this. I'm going to include a link in the show notes to this book. I think it's a really fabulous book. And like I said, it's a window into the truth of relationships. And there's also a lot of very useful advice and counsel about how to navigate these really tricky moments that people have. So if you have any comments, I'd enjoy hearing back from you. And I hope that hearing this gives you a new view of the mundane work that you do that is so important for your life to be able to be carried out in the day-to-day. Thanks for listening. Thank you for tuning into NVC Life. For future episodes, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube. For free resources or to book a private session with me, head over to RachelleLamb.com. Until the next time, stay sane, grateful, and generous.